As unbelievable as it may sound, one reviewer called Rango a confusing mess, while another called it a public health hazard and a horrific experience. But then there are critics who called it one of the wildest, most creative animated films ever made. Someone even said it was a giddily creative masterpiece and one of Hollywood's wildest gems. I even ragged on Rango on another thumbnail, where you guys really let me have it. I remember really liking it, but it had been years. So I went and rewatched Rango again, and I have to say, it was even better than I remember. Same movie, but very different reactions. So what happened here? How does one film split people like that? The answer lies in how Rango breaks several writing rules, including the number one rule. Rango starts with a lonely pet chameleon who lives in a glass tank. He spends his days talking to a plastic fish and a mannequin because he thinks he's an actor for the big screen. But then his tank falls out of a car and shatters in the middle of a giant, scary desert, throwing him into confusion and dread. However, he soon meets an old armadillo who tells him to find the spirit of the West. But after almost getting eaten by a huge hawk and having some very weird dreams, he instead finds a dry, dusty town called Dirt. The animals in Dirt are thirsty because their water is almost gone. Then things get really interesting when our chameleon friend decides to play a character. He tells everyone his name is Rango, and that he is a tough hero. By a total accident, he kills the scary hawk that was bothering the town, and the mayor makes him the new sheriff. But things get complicated when Rango accidentally helps some bank robbers, finds out the water bottle in the bank is empty, and realizes the mayor is secretly buying up all the land. Unfortunately for Rango, the mayor brings in a terrifying snake named Rattlesnake Jake to scare him away. Jake humbles Rango and proves he is a big fake. So Rango leaves town, feeling like a failure. In the desert, he finally meets the spirit of the West, who tells him no one can walk out on their own story. Rango then goes back to Dirt, tricks the bad guys, saves his friends, and brings the water back to the town. Now, an animated plot usually wouldn't read like this. Most cartoons are full of cute characters and happy songs, but Rango is a gritty western. It's dirty, dusty, and feels like an old movie your grandpa might watch, just with weird animals instead of people. And this is only possible because the story was created by someone who has a special knack for flipping movies upside down. That person is Gore Verbinski, the creator and director of Rango. He approached the movie with a philosophy of imperfection, where he sprinkles messiness on his work to make it feel real and spontaneous. For him, imperfection is the secret ingredient. He once said that he looks for a flaw, like an awkward flicker in an eye or something that feels like an accident. He thinks that if something is too perfect, it feels fake. You can see this same philosophy in the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies, which he also directed. Those movies were great because they were weird, funny, and felt dangerous. Jack Sparrow was a messy, stumbling pirate who succeeded by accident half the time. Verbinski took that same energy and decided to move it into the world of animated movies. He wanted to see if he could bring that chaos to a medium where everything is usually planned out years in advance. So we can dare to call his approach the Gore of Verbinski. When we hear the word gore, we usually think of violence resulting in blood and guts. Now, while Rango isn't exactly a bloody movie, the word violence can also mean the destruction of order. And indeed, Verbinski violated the normal rules of how movies are made. He broke the order of how a cartoon is supposed to look and feel. He didn't even want to call Rango an animated movie.
I don't really think of it as a cartoon or an animated movie, really. I just think of it as a film.
He destroyed the idea that a kids' movie has to be safe or clean. Instead of making a movie that looked like every other hit on the shelf, he made something that felt like a dusty, sweaty, broken down world. With this philosophy of messiness in mind, Rango subverted the number one rule of writing, especially in animation, which is basically know your audience. It does this by creating a sophisticated, existential, and intense spaghetti western aimed at a mainstream family audience. Instead of prioritizing market-friendly tropes, the film delivered a weird, critically acclaimed masterpiece that thrived by breaking conventions. He didn't care if a 5-year-old didn't understand every joke about desert law because he trusted that if he made something honest and imperfect, people would love it anyway. But this is also where the problem, as well as the genius of Rango, began, because when you look closer, you discover that ignoring what a typical audience wanted was just the beginning of the chaos. The real subversion, the part that actually changed the game, was the way Gore Verbinski and his team systematically broke every other rule in the book. One of the greatest gems of Rango happens during the canyon chase. It is a 6-minute masterclass in chaos that proves Rango is not a normal animated movie. It starts with Spoons, an old spirited mouse, sending a signal that leads to a frantic breakout where Rango and his team try to escape with a massive water jug. Suddenly, a swarm of prairie dogs emerges from the cliff dwellings like a black cloud, riding on the backs of giant bats. These rodents attack the wagon, wearing aviator goggles and firing modified Gatling guns. You see wide, sweeping shots that show the scale of the canyon, and then the camera zooms in for high-speed intensity. It feels dangerous and fast, a total subversion of the safe action usually found in cartoons. Yet there are other clever visual details everywhere, like the prairie dogs drinking moonshine and blasting a banjo rendition of Ride of the Valkyries by Richard Wagner. This scene is great because it handles action better than most animated movies, in that it is gritty and unpredictable. But the visual subversion of Rango doesn't excel in this scene alone. You see, while the chase is about high-speed spectacle, the introduction of Rattlesnake Jake is another masterpiece, especially because of how Jake was foreshadowed. For the first half of the film, Jake is built as a mythic killer, and he lives up to every bit of that hype the second he slithers into town in the most iconic and terrifying way. After Rango delivers a speech about the townspeople believing in him as the sheriff, Jake shuts him up by shooting the sign that reads Sheriff. Then the snake appears for the first time. Instead of a rattle at the end of his tail, he has a mechanical Gatling gun. His skin looks like a dusty, shredded cowboy vest, and he is covered in ammunition. He is the Grim Reaper of the desert, and his presence immediately shifts the movie from a comedy into a serious western. This is partly thanks to his design and the amazing cinematography that drives and enhances his presence, another subversion of visual representation. But one other reason why these visuals feel so visceral is that Verbinski refused to use the industry standard of motion capture. In most movies, actors wear suits with sensors in a sterile room, but Verbinski felt that was too stiff and robotic. He wanted a motion capture, so he had the actors actually dress up in Western gear and perform the scenes together on a real stage with props.
Instead of motion capture, kind of emotion capture.
If Rango was talking or making any facial expressions, Johnny Depp was actually acting it out. By shooting this way, the animators were looking at the real, accidental movements and facial expressions of the actors. Verbinski knew from his time directing Pirates of the Caribbean that you can't fake the gifs that happen when actors improvise or react to one another in person. He wanted the awkward flickers in the eyes and the little stumbles that made a performance feel human. This philosophy of imperfection is why Rango looks so different from the perfect 3D movies made by the likes of Pixar or DreamWorks. After all, Verbinski didn't have the budget for high-end 3D, so he leaned into a gritty 2D-inspired style that focused on asymmetry. And because of this, every character is visually dripping with personality because they aren't just cute. You see a blind mole, a rabbit missing an ear, or even Rango, who has one eye bigger than the other. These characters were designed to tell a story instead of to be sold as toys. but this also ended up causing a lot of trouble with grown-ups. Some groups got really upset because there is a lot of smoking in the movie. In fact, Rango has about 60 scenes with characters smoking, which is around 60 more than a modern movie is supposed to have. And the only other big animated movie with that much smoking was 101 Dalmatians because of Cruella de Vil, and it was also 1961. Doctors were still telling people that smoking could cure asthma. Rango came out after every alleged benefit of smoking had been debunked. Everybody knows smoking kills. Breathe California was worried that kids would see the animals smoking and want to try it themselves, but they missed the point of why the movie did that. Rango is trying to be an authentic Western, and in those old movies, everyone was always surrounded by smoke and dust. The movie was just using those details to make the world feel like a real, gritty place from the past. It needed those details to feel like a true Western. But while Gore Verbinski decided to maintain some Western elements in Rango, he chose to subvert others, perhaps the most important aspects.
It's a new West, Jake. There's no room for gunslingers anymore. We're businessmen now.
Those words perfectly set the stage for how this movie breaks the rules of both cartoons and Westerns. Usually, when you watch a Western, you expect a tough, silent hero who is amazing with a gun. Someone like Clint Eastwood, but Rango isn't like that at all. In fact, the whole movie is framed in a very weird and funny way by a band of owl musicians wearing Mexican hats and playing instruments. These owls follow Rango around and sing about how he is probably going to die.
When is he going to die?
Soon, compadre.
This is a huge subversion because most movies try to make you forget you're watching a film. But with these owls popping up to give their absurd commentary, Rango is constantly reminding you that you're sitting in a theater watching a comedy. It proudly shows off how ridiculous it is, and even though the music by Hans Zimmer sounds like a serious epic adventure, the owls keep things feeling like a strange play. Additionally, even though it is inspired by Western movies like A Fistful of Dollars, or even weird movies like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, it flips the themes upside down. Normally, a Western is about a hero getting revenge or finding justice, such as in Once Upon a Time in the West or Pale Rider. But Rango is different because it is actually a story about a character trying to find out who he is.
I think it's an identity quest. I mean, it's a sort of, everybody wants to be loved.
Rango starts the movie without even having a name. He is an empty book waiting for someone to write in it. He wants to be a hero, but he doesn't know how, so he just starts acting. Because he is a chameleon, his whole nature is about blending in, but he spends the whole movie failing to do that until he decides to invent a character with a fake past and fake bravery. However, he eventually ditches the fake life and is guided by the spirit of the West, who gives him the best advice in the movie. He tells Rango that it doesn't matter what you call yourself or how you want people to see you.
Doesn't matter what they call you. It's the deeds make the man.
Instead of trying to act like a hero, you just have to do what needs to be done for other people. Rango has to let his ego die. He has to stop caring about being Rango the legend and just start being the person who helps the town of Dirt. This is a huge change from most Westerns, where the hero is just born skilled and stoic just like John Wayne. Whereas Rango has to learn that being a hero is a choice you make every day by helping others. But while this subversion is great and all, it wouldn't have been possible without this last and probably the most important detail of all. To be very honest, if you really want to see how Rango subverted the rules of writing, you have to look closely at how it uses luck. We're talking about the obvious, almost ridiculous luck that keeps saving the main character over and over again. In most stories, the hero earns every win. They train, they get better, and when danger shows up, they handle it with skill. Even if luck appears, it only helps a little. The hero still does the hard part. That's basically the rule, right? Except Rango doesn't give a damn about that rule. The first lucky moment comes when Rango is chased by a hawk. He initially thinks it is a smart choice to hide inside a bottle, but then the hawk picks up the bottle to drop it from the sky so it will shatter. Except by total accident, the bottle lands perfectly on a toad that Rango had met earlier. Later, the hawk gets distracted by a different meal, and Rango gets away scot-free. This establishes that Rango is an underdog, but it also starts the pattern of luck that defines his early journey. And it continues when the hawk comes back and finds Rango is in front of the whole town. This time around, Rango tries to be clever by using a vending machine and a licorice rope, but the hawk is still too smart for him. Then, in a moment of panic, Rango fires his gun at the licorice to free himself. He isn't even trying to hit the hawk, but the bullet ricochets around randomly like a pinball until it hits a water tower. The tower collapses and crushes the hawk. To the townspeople, Rango looks like a legendary gunslinger who made a trick shot. But we know it was just a conveniently fortunate finish. Now it's happened twice. Then you get to the canyon chase, and this is where the film makes the pattern clear. Everything in that scene should go wrong for Rango. He gets pulled off the wagon, thrown into the air, dropped into chaos, and surrounded by enemies. At one point, he's flying through the air with no control at all, and yet every time he falls, something catches him. A rope swings him in the right direction, a bat crashes at just the right moment, dynamite lands in his hands at the exact second he needs it, and when it explodes, it clears a path instead of killing him. He wins effortlessly, but the writers did this on purpose, to show that his masquerade is reaching a breaking point. Rango is a chameleon who can't blend in, acting out a hero's journey while being a cowardly actor who fabricated his entire existence. Every lucky moment makes the town believe in him more. They think he's brave, skilled, and dangerous. But the truth is the opposite. He's scared, confused, and always one step away from being exposed. So the more he wins, the bigger the lie becomes. That is the trick. Luck is digging a hole under him. Because at some point, the story has to take that luck away. And when Rattlesnake Jake shows up, that is exactly what happens. Unlike the hawk, Jake is an authentic force that cannot be defeated by a lucky accident. He challenges Rango in the street, offers him his venom, and gives him a free clean shot.
Go ahead, hero. Pull the trigger.
For the first time, there are no ricocheting bullets or falling towers to save him, because Rango is a fraud with no killer instinct. He can't pull the trigger. That moment hits hard because you have seen how he survived before. You have watched the pattern, and now that pattern is gone and the truth is clear. Without luck, he has nothing to stand on. This is where the film flips the hero's journey. In most stories, this is the part where the hero proves they have grown strong enough. Here, the hero fails completely. The version of himself he created falls apart in seconds. The town sees it, and he sees it too.
Who are you?
In the climax of the movie, the writing subverts the rules once more. Rango returns, but this time he bests Jake using pure strategy, and no luck at all. He uses a plan with the hill folk and a clever diversion, proving he's finally earned his status as a hero. But because the movie loves its own absurdity, it brings the luck back one last time, when Rango and Beans are drowning inside a glass vault. Beans has a bullet in her mouth after she kissed Rango, and when he performs a move to save her from choking, she spits the bullet out with enough force to crack the glass. This is still a goofy, luck-filled moment, but now it works because he's earned it. Because Rango already made the hard choice. He already stepped up when it mattered. The luck does not replace his effort anymore. It just helps him finish what he started. And that is how the film subverts the rules of writing. It takes one of the biggest rules, make your hero competent, and breaks it on purpose. It lets the main character fail upward through pure luck, builds a story around that weakness, and then rips away the safety net at the worst possible moment. What you're left with is a real hero who started with nothing, hid behind luck, got exposed, and still chose to step back in when it mattered most. That is the trick of luck in Rango. It looks like a shortcut at first, but it's actually the whole point of the story. But while Rango might have subverted a lot of writing rules, there was something it failed to touch, and it has something to do with writing a funny villain. But one cannot exactly blame it because during the time of release, animation was facing a decline in funny villains. This video here covers everything about when villains lost their humor.